The mining station on Kepler 442b hummed with quiet efficiency, its massive extractors pulling precious minerals from the planet's crust, while 3 different species worked in careful harmony. The Vorthak, with their crystalline skin, gleamed under the artificial lights, their movements precise and calculated. The Genti floated through the corridors on their gravity manipulators, their tentacled forms weaving between the larger bipedal workers. And then there were the humans, newest members of the Galactic Mining Consortium, still proving themselves worthy of trust. Commander Sarah Chen checked the duty roster on her wrist display as she walked through the main corridor. 6 months into humanity's probationary period with the consortium, everything had to be perfect. One mistake, one violation of protocol, and Earth would lose its mining rights across 12 systems. The pressure was constant, but Sarah had learned to carry it well. Commander Chen called out Vorthak Supervisor Krell 9, his voice resonating through the translation device attached to his throat. The deep extraction teams report nominal progress in Sector 7. Sarah nodded, making notes on her tablet. Any issues with the new drill configurations? None. Your human engineers adapted quickly to our specifications. There was something that might have been approval in Krell 9's tone. The Vorthak rarely offered praise, so Sarah took it as a good sign. As they talked, a small figure darted between them, moving so quickly that Sarah almost didn't notice. But the flash of blue-green skin and the soft chirping sound made her turn. A young Genti, no bigger than a human 5-year-old, tumbled through the air using tiny gravity manipulators that sputtered and sparked. Zara K., Genti Supervisor Moth N called out, their tentacles flashing rapid colors of concern. Return to the residential sector immediately. The little one, Zara K., giggled in response, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. She spun in midair and zipped toward the service tunnels that led to the mining levels. Her movements were erratic, playful, but also unpracticed. The gravity manipulators were clearly malfunctioning. Should I send security? Sarah asked. But Moth N was already gliding after the child, their massive forms surprisingly graceful as they navigated the corridors. No need, Moth N replied, though their color patterns showed stress. Zara K. is curious about the mining operations. She will tire soon and return. Sarah watched them disappear around a corner and felt a familiar tug of parental worry. She had a daughter back on Earth. About the same age as the little Genti, Maya would be starting school soon, learning about the stars her mother worked among. The thought made Sarah smile, but also reminded her of the weight of responsibility she carried for all of humanity's future. An hour later, alarms began to wail. The emergency klaxons echoed through every corridor, and red lights bathed the station in urgent crimson. Sarah's tablet exploded with alerts as she ran toward the command center. Mining operations across all sectors showed critical failures. Seismic readings were off the charts. Report, she barked as she burst into the control room. Human technician Rodriguez looked up from his console, face pale. Massive cave-in in the deep tunnels. Sector 9. The whole network is collapsing. Krell 9's crystalline features somehow managed to convey grim concern. Sector 9 houses our primary mineral veins. If those tunnels collapse completely, we lose 60% of our extraction capability. Casualties? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. All personnel evacuated, Rodriguez confirmed, then hesitated. Except, Moth N's colors had gone completely white, the Genti equivalent of terror. Zara K. She was exploring the service tunnels. The collapse has trapped her in a pocket deep underground. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How deep? Approximately 800 meters below surface, Krell 9 reported, reading from the seismic data. The pocket appears stable for now, but the surrounding structure is compromised. Any attempt to reach her could trigger complete collapse. So we dig carefully, Sarah said immediately. We have the equipment. We can tunnel down and extract her. But both alien supervisors were already shaking their heads, or their species equivalent. Impossible, Krell 9 stated. Consortium Protocol 7 Alpha strictly forbids rescue operations that could endanger primary infrastructure. Sector 9 represents too valuable an investment to risk. Protocol 7 Alpha? Sarah stared at them. Are you telling me we're going to leave a child to die because of mining quotas? Mothen's tentacles drooped, their colors cycling through patterns of grief. The math is clear, Commander Chen. One life cannot justify risking the entire operation. Zara K knew the dangers of the deep tunnels. This is the way of the consortium. The hell it is. Sarah's voice was quiet, dangerous. Every human in the command center turned to look at her. Rodriguez, get me everything we have on those tunnel systems. I want structural analysis, mineral composition, stress load calculations, everything. Commander. Krell 9's voice carried warning. You are new to consortium operations. Perhaps you do not understand the significance of the protocols. Sarah turned to face both alien supervisors, her brown eyes hard as steel. Maybe I don't understand your protocols, but I understand that a child is trapped and afraid, 800 meters below us, and you want me to write her off as acceptable losses. The consortium has survived for 12 millennia because we follow these protocols, Krell 9 replied stiffly. Emotional decisions lead to disaster. Logic must prevail. Logic. Sarah tasted the word like something bitter. Is it logical to let children die when we have the technology to save them? Rodriguez cleared his throat. Commander, I've pulled up the structural data, the pocket where the child is trapped. It's stable, but barely. The whole area is like a house of cards. One wrong move and everything from Sector 7 to Sector 12 could come down. On the main screen, a three-dimensional map showed the underground complex. The mining tunnels stretched like a vast spider web through the planet's crust, with Zara K's location marked as a tiny red dot surrounded by increasingly unstable rock formations. The computer projected collapse probabilities in stark numbers. Any rescue attempt had an 87% chance of triggering catastrophic failure. You see? Krell 9's crystals chimed softly. The mathematics are inescapable. We must accept this loss and prevent greater tragedy. Sarah stared at the screen, her mind racing. She thought of Maya, safe in her classroom on Earth, learning about courage and doing the right thing. What would she tell her daughter about this day? That mommy had to follow protocols? That some lives weren't worth the risk? Commander, Mothen said gently, their colors shifting to softer hues of sympathy. I grieve for Zara K as you do. But the consortium's rules exist for good reason. In your human history, did you not have to make similar choices during disasters? Save the few or save the many? Yeah, we did. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. And every time we chose the many, we became a little less human. The command center fell silent, except for the steady beeping of monitoring equipment and the distant rumble of mining operations in the stable sectors. Through the viewports, the alien sun cast strange shadows across the rocky landscape, and Sarah wondered if this was really the future humanity wanted to join. There has to be another way, she said finally. Commander Chen, Krell 9's tone was formal now, official. As senior consortium supervisor on this station, I am ordering you to stand down. No rescue attempt will be made. Human personnel will return to their assigned duties immediately. Sarah felt every eye in the room on her. Her human crew waited for her response, while the alien supervisors watched to see if humanity would prove as logical and protocol-bound as they demanded. Down in the darkness below, a child was alone and afraid, trusting that the adults would save her. Rodriguez leaned closer to her console. Commander, he whispered, I've been looking at the geological surveys from the early setup. There might be another way down, an old lava tube system that runs parallel to the mining tunnels. It would bypass most of the unstable areas. Rodriguez, Sarah warned quietly, whatever you're thinking, remember that Earth's membership is on the line here. I know, ma'am. But, he glanced toward the screen, showing Zara K's location. I've got a little girl too. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of two different futures pressing down on her. In one future, humanity joined the consortium as obedient members, following protocols and accepting that some prices were too high to pay. In the other, they remained true to the values that had brought them to the stars in the first place. When she opened her eyes, her decision was made. Rodriguez, quietly transfer all geological data to my personal unit. Jenkins, I want our best tunneling equipment prepped and moved to Storage Bay 7. Tell anyone who asks that we're conducting routine maintenance. Commander, Krell9's voice rose sharply. What are you planning? Sarah turned to face him, her expression calm but determined. I'm going to save that child. The consortium can court-martial me later. You will be stripped of rank. Your species will lose mining rights. Earth will be banned from consortium space, Krell9 warned. Maybe. But at least when I go home, I'll be able to look my daughter in the eye and tell her that when it mattered most, we chose to be human. The alien supervisors exchanged what might have been looks of disbelief. Mothin's tentacles writhed in agitation, their colors flashing rapid patterns of distress. This is madness, they said. Your emotional attachment is overriding logical thought. You're probably right, Sarah agreed. But sometimes madness is just another word for hope. Mater. She began issuing orders to her human crew, watching as each one chose whether to follow her into potential disaster or stick to safe protocol. One by one, they stepped forward, Rodriguez first, then Jenkins, then the others. Even the youngest technician, fresh from Earth's academies, straightened his shoulders and nodded. Ma'am, Jenkins said quietly, if we're doing this, we better do it fast. The geological readings show the pocket is losing stability. We might have 6 hours before it collapses on its own. Then we better get moving. Sarah grabbed her equipment harness from her locker. Anyone who wants out, now's your chance. No judgment, no consequences. No one moved. Krell9's crystal skin had shifted to darker hues. What Sarah had learned meant anger or disapproval among the Vorthak. Commander Chen, you are making a catastrophic error. The consortium will not forgive this breach of protocol. Then I guess we better make sure it works, Sarah replied, heading for the door. Because if that little girl dies on my watch, because I was too scared to try, I won't forgive myself. As they left the command center, Sarah heard Mothin speaking rapidly to Krell 9 inches, their own languages, their translation devices mercifully silent. She didn't need to understand their words to know they were debating whether to stop the humans by force. Let them debate. Every minute they spent discussing protocols was another minute Zara K had to survive in her underground prison. And every minute gave Sarah's team more time to prove that sometimes, the right choice and the logical choice weren't the same thing. The corridors of the mining station suddenly felt different as Sarah led her team towards Storage Bay 7. The familiar hum of machinery now sounded ominous, and the shadows seemed deeper. Behind them, she could hear the alien supervisors' voices growing louder, more urgent. Rodriguez, she said as they walked, how long to reach the lava tubes? If we go through the old maintenance shafts, maybe 2 hours. But Commander, the readings show massive instability throughout that whole area. One wrong move, and we could bring down half the mountain. Then we don't make any wrong moves. Sarah's voice was steady, but inside, her heart was hammering. She thought again of Maya, of the bedtime stories she told about brave explorers who never gave up, never left anyone behind. Today, they would find out if those stories meant anything at all. The storage bay doors slid open to reveal their equipment. Emergency tunneling units, atmospheric processors, emergency medical supplies, and the kind of gear that could either save a life or end several. Sarah's team moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role without being told. As they prepared to descend into the darkness below, Sarah activated her personal communicator one last time. Mining Station Echo 7 to Earth Command, she said, recording a message she hoped would never be needed. Commander Sarah Chen reporting. In approximately 1 hour, we will attempt an unauthorized rescue operation that may result in the loss of Earth's consortium membership. I take full responsibility for this decision and any consequences that follow. She paused, thinking of Maya again, of the woman she hoped her daughter would become. Sometimes, she concluded, being human means risking everything to save one child. Chen out. The communicator went dark, and Sarah sealed it away. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back. The tunnels were waiting. The maintenance shaft dropped into darkness like a throat, leading to the planet's stomach. Sarah checked her equipment one final time as her team prepared for descent. The tunneling unit hummed quietly on its suspensor field, packed with everything they might need for the most dangerous rescue attempt of their careers. Atmospheric readings are stable down to 400 meters, Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with concentration. After that, we're in unknown territory. Jenkins adjusted the portable drilling array, its compact fusion core glowing softly behind protective shielding. Power levels are optimal, but Commander, if we hit unstable rock at depth, this thing could trigger exactly the kind of collapse we're trying to avoid. Then we'll be very, very careful, Sarah replied, clipping the last of her safety gear to her harness. Through the shaft's opening, she could see stars scattered across the alien sky like scattered diamonds. Maya would be asleep now on Earth, safe in her bed, dreaming of adventures among those same stars. All teams, sound off, Sarah commanded. Drilling team ready, Jenkins confirmed. Geological monitoring ready, Rodriguez added. Medical and emergency ready, called out Dr. Park, their chief medical officer, who had volunteered despite having no excavation experience. Communications ready, said Technician Walsh, her young voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Sarah activated her helmet lights and stepped into the shaft. Remember, we're not just trying to save one child today. We're deciding what kind of species humanity becomes, out here, among the stars. The descent began in silence, broken only by the soft whir of descender units and the occasional ping of geological sensors. The walls of the maintenance shaft were smooth metal for the first 100 meters, then gave way to roughly carved rock as they passed through the station's foundation and into the planet's crust. At 200 meters, Rodriguez called out their first problem. Commander, I'm reading seismic activity. Something big is shifting in the rock layers ahead of us. Natural settling or equipment related? Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Unknown, but the patterns match what we saw just before the main collapse. The whole underground structure is more unstable than we thought. Sarah paused their descent, hanging in the darkness, while she considered their options. Above them, the maintenance shaft stretched up toward the safety of the station. Below them, the darkness held either salvation or disaster. How much further to the lava tubes? 50 meters, maybe 60. And Zara K's location? Rodriguez checked his sensors again. Still stable, but I'm reading decreased atmospheric pressure in her pocket. She's running out of air faster than we calculated. Dr. Park's voice crackled over the comm. Commander, if the child is Genti, their respiratory needs are different from ours. They process oxygen more efficiently, but they need trace gases that aren't common in standard atmospheric mixes. Without proper air composition, she might have less time than we thought. Sarah felt the weight of decision pressing down on her like the rock above their heads. Every minute they spent debating was a minute less for Zara K, but rushing forward blindly could collapse the tunnels and kill them all. Walsh, can you establish communication with the child? Working on it, Commander. The rock is dense, but I might be able to bounce a signal through the metal ore veins. There was a pause filled with electronic static. Got something. Very weak, but it's definitely her. The static cleared for a moment, and a tiny voice emerged from the speakers. Zara K was singing to herself in the Genti language, her voice barely a whisper but somehow still carrying that musical quality her species was known for. Even through the translation device, Sarah could hear the fear underneath the brave attempt at comfort. Tell her we're coming, Sarah said quietly. Walsh spoke rapidly in the Genti language she had learned during their cultural integration training. After a moment, the singing stopped, replaced by excited chirping. She says she's scared, but she knew someone would come. She says humans don't leave people behind. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. This child, trapped in darkness hundreds of meters below ground, had faith in a species she barely knew based on 6 months of working together. The trust was overwhelming and terrifying. Resume descent. Full sensor sweep every 10 meters. They dropped deeper into the planet, their lights creating small pools of safety in the endless darkness. The rock walls changed from smooth excavated stone to natural formations, twisted and folded by geological forces older than human civilization. Strange mineral veins caught their light and reflected it back in alien colors. At 300 meters, they found the lava tubes. Holy! Jenkins whispered, his light playing across the enormous cavern that opened before them. Commander, this is bigger than anything in the geological surveys. The ancient volcanic activity had carved a vast network of tunnels through the rock, some large enough to drive a transport through, others barely wide enough for a single person. The walls were smooth, obsidian-like stone, formed when molten rock had flowed through these passages millions of years ago. Rodriguez, can you get a fix on Zara K from here? Working on it. The technician's sensor array cast strange shadows as it scanned the cavern. There, bearing 27 Mark 14, approximately 500 meters through that central tunnel, Sarah examined the route on her display. The passage looked stable, but appearances could be deceiving this far underground. What's the rock composition between here and there? Mixed sedimentary and igneous. Some areas look solid, others. Rodriguez hesitated. Others show stress fractures that could give way under pressure. Define pressure, footsteps, loud voices, strong vibrations of any kind. They had reached the point where every choice was dangerous. Sarah thought of the alternative. Returning to the surface to explain to Moth N that they had gotten close, but decided the risk was too great. Imagining that conversation made her decision easy. We proceed on foot, single file, minimum equipment, no powered tools until we reach the child's location. Dr. Park spoke up from the rear of the group. Commander, what about the tunneling equipment? We'll need it to extract her. We'll bring what we can carry by hand. The rest stays here until we assess the final approach. They left most of their heavy gear in the lava tube chamber, taking only essential supplies and medical equipment. The central tunnel stretched ahead of them like a path into the underworld, its walls gleaming with mineral deposits that had never seen sunlight. The journey became a delicate dance of stealth and speed. Every footstep was carefully placed, every breath measured and quiet. The rock around them groaned occasionally, reminding them that millions of tons of stone hung overhead, held up by geological forces they could neither see nor fully understand. 200 meters into the tunnel, they encountered their first major obstacle. Collapse zone ahead, Rodriguez reported in a whisper. Recent, probably from the same event that trapped the child. A pile of broken rock blocked most of the tunnel, leaving only a narrow gap near the ceiling. The stones were still settling, occasionally shifting with soft clicking sounds that made everyone freeze. Can we clear it safely? Sarah asked. Jenkins examined the blockage with his portable scanner. Maybe, but it would take hours and make a lot of noise. That gap up top looks passable. But it's tight. How tight? One person at a time, and they'd have to squeeze. Sarah studied the gap. It was barely wide enough for a human, and completely impassable for either of the alien species back at the station. Another reminder that sometimes being physically smaller was an advantage. I'll go first. Walsh, maintain communications relay from this position. Everyone else waits here until I signal all clear from the other side. The gap was even tighter than it looked. Sarah had to remove most of her equipment and push it ahead of her as she squeezed through, her helmet scraping against the rock ceiling. Halfway through, a stone shifted under her weight, and she held absolutely still as debris rained down around her. On the other side, she found herself in another stretch of tunnel, this one showing clear signs of recent damage. Cracks ran along the walls like lightning frozen in stone, and the air tasted of dust and ozone. It's passable, she reported back, but move very carefully. One by one, her team squeezed through the gap. Dr. Park struggled most, her medical equipment making the passage even more difficult. But she emerged safely with only a few new scratches on her gear. How much further? Sarah asked. Rodriguez checked his readings. 200 meters, maybe less. But Commander, the seismic activity is increasing. Something's wrong. Before Sarah could ask what he meant, the answer came in the form of a deep rumble that seemed to originate from the walls themselves. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, and the floor beneath their feet vibrated like a drumhead. That was not a natural shift, Jenkins said grimly. Something heavy just moved somewhere above us. Sarah's communicator crackled to life. Walsh had managed to re-establish contact with the surface. And Krell 9's crystalline voice echoed through the tunnel. Commander Chen, you will cease this operation immediately. Our sensors indicate massive structural instability throughout the underground complex. Your activities are accelerating the collapse timeline. How much time do we have? Sarah asked. There was a pause before Krell 9 answered. At current decay rates, total structural failure will occur in approximately 47 minutes. And the child? Unknown. The localized pocket may survive longer, or it may be the first to collapse. The mathematics are uncertain. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, calculating 47 minutes to reach Zara K, extract her from whatever pocket of space she was trapped in, and somehow return through the increasingly unstable tunnel system. Rodriguez, at our current pace, how long to reach her? 20 minutes. Maybe 15, if we take risks with the unstable sections. And extraction time? Dr. Park answered this one. Unknown. Depends on her condition, the size of the space she's in, and whether we need to perform any medical procedures before moving her. Commander, Krell 9's voice carried a tone that might have been pleading. You still have time to evacuate. Return to the surface immediately. And you will face only administrative consequences. Continue this course, and you will almost certainly die. Sarah looked at her team. Each face showed the same mixture of fear and determination she felt in her own heart. These people had followed her into the darkness knowing the risks, trusting her judgment even when that judgment defied all logic and protocol. Krell 9, she said finally. I understand your position. But we didn't come this far to turn back now. She cut the communication and turned to her team. Everyone still committed to this insanity? Yes, ma'am, came the unanimous reply. Then let's go save a child. The final stretch of tunnel proved to be the most treacherous yet. The walls showed severe stress fractures, and several sections required careful climbing over debris from smaller cave-ins. The air grew thinner and more polluted with rock dust, forcing them to activate their emergency breathing apparatus. With 5 minutes left in Rodriguez's estimate, they heard something that made them all freeze. Singing. Zara K's voice drifted through the rock, much clearer now that they were close. She was singing what sounded like a lullaby in the Genti language. Her voice small but brave in the darkness. There, Rodriguez pointed toward a crack in the tunnel wall that glowed faintly with artificial light. She's through there. Maybe 3 meters back in a natural cavity. Sarah approached the crack carefully. It was just wide enough for her to see through. And what she saw made her heart ache. Zara K sat in a space no bigger than a small bedroom, surrounded by chunks of fallen rock. Her gravity manipulator unit was cracked and sparking, obviously damaged in the collapse. She looked up as Sarah's light found her, and her large eyes reflected the glow like twin stars. Hello, little one, Sarah said in her carefully practiced Genti. We're here to take you home. The child's response was rapid and excited, too fast for Sarah's limited language skills to follow. Walsh squeezed up beside her and took over the translation. She says she knew humans would come because humans don't give up on people. She's hurt. Her leg is trapped under some rocks. But she's been brave and stayed quiet like her parents taught her. Sarah examined the gap. It was too narrow for any of them to fit through. But their portable drilling unit might be able to widen it safely. Jenkins, how long to open this up enough for extraction? Maybe 10 minutes if the rock cooperates. But Commander, any drilling is going to create vibrations. If this whole area is as unstable as it looks, I know. Sarah checked her chronometer. According to Krell 9's estimate, they had less than 30 minutes before total collapse. Do it. But carefully. As Jenkins prepared the drilling unit, another rumble shook the tunnel. This one, stronger than before. Small rocks fell from the ceiling, and several of the cracks in the walls visibly widened. That was definitely not natural, Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with concern. Something major just failed somewhere in the complex. Through the crack, they could see Zara K looking around nervously as dust fell into her small prison. Her singing had stopped, replaced by the rapid color changes that indicated fear in Zenti children. Walsh, keep talking to her. Don't let her panic. The drilling began with agonizing slowness. Jenkins operated the unit with surgical precision, removing tiny amounts of rock at a time to avoid creating the vibrations that could bring down the tunnel around them. Each pulse of the drill sent small tremors through the stone, and each tremor made Sarah wonder if they were already too late. 10 minutes became 15, then 20. The gap widened gradually, but it was still too narrow for safe extraction. Worse, Rodriguez's sensors were showing increasingly erratic readings from the surrounding rock. "Commander," Rodriguez said quietly, "the mathematics just changed. We're not going to make it out in time." Sarah looked at her team, then at the frightened child visible through the gap they had fought so hard to create. Zarake was looking back at her with absolute trust, believing that the humans who had come this far would find a way to save her. Sometimes, Sarah realized, being human meant finding a way when there was no way. "Then we better work faster," she said, and began pulling emergency gear from her pack. Time was running out. But humans had never been good at accepting the impossible. Sarah pulled the emergency explosive charges from her pack, their small forms seeming insignificant against the massive weight of rock surrounding them. Jenkins stared at her in disbelief. "Commander, you can't be serious. Explosives down here will bring down everything from here to the surface." "Not if we shape the charges correctly," Sarah replied, her hands steady as she examined the gap they needed to widen. "Rodriguez, I need precise measurements of the rock density and stress distribution around this opening." "Commander," Dr. Park said quietly, "even if we get her out, how do we get back through 500 meters of collapsing tunnel?" Sarah met her eyes. "We figure that out after we save her. One impossible thing at a time." Rodriguez's scanner hummed as it analyzed the rock formation. "The stone here is layered sedimentary, with granite intrusions. If we could place charges at these 3 specific points," he highlighted areas on his display, "we might create a controlled fracture that would widen the gap without causing general collapse." "Might?" Jenkins asked. 73% probability of success," Rodriguez admitted. "But Commander, even if it works, the vibrations from the explosion will definitely accelerate the overall collapse timeline." Through the gap, Zarake had started singing again. But her voice was weaker now. The air in her prison was growing thinner, and Sarah could see that several of the rocks pinning her leg had shifted during the recent tremors. "Walsh, ask her if she can move back as far as possible from this opening." After a brief exchange in Genti, Walsh nodded. "She understands. She says to tell the humans thank you for coming to save her, even though it's dangerous." The simple gratitude in the child's words hit Sarah harder than any of Krell 9's warnings. Here was a being who didn't even belong to their species, placing absolute faith in human determination to do the right thing. "Set the charges," Sarah ordered. "Minimum yield, maximum precision." Jenkins's hands shook slightly as he positioned the explosive devices according to Rodriguez's calculations. Each charge was no bigger than a marble, but placed correctly, they could crack stone with surgical precision. Placed incorrectly, they could turn their rescue mission into a burial. "Charges set," Jenkins reported. "Detonation in 60 seconds. Everyone take cover behind the tunnel bend." They retreated to a position 30 meters back down the tunnel, crouching behind a natural stone formation that Rodriguez hoped would shield them from the worst of the blast. Sarah's chronometer showed 18 minutes remaining until Krell 9's predicted total collapse. "Fire in the hole," Jenkins announced, and pressed the detonator. The explosion was smaller than Sarah had expected, more of a sharp crack than a roar, but the effect was immediate and terrifying. The entire tunnel system groaned like a living thing in pain, and chunks of rock began falling from the ceiling in a steady rain. "Move, move, move," Sarah shouted, leading her team back toward the gap as debris cascaded around them. The explosion had worked better than Rodriguez's calculations had predicted. The gap was now wide enough for an adult human to fit through, though it would be a tight squeeze. More importantly, Zara K was still alive and conscious, though clearly frightened by the noise and falling stones. "Dr. Park, you're up," Sarah said, pulling her medical officer toward the opening. Get in there and assess her condition. Dr. Park squeezed through the gap with her emergency medical kit. Sarah could hear her talking softly to Zara K in basic Genti. Her voice professionally calm despite their desperate situation. "Commander," Dr. Park called out after a few minutes. "She has a compound fracture in her left leg and possible internal injuries. Moving her is risky, but leaving her here is certain death. Can you stabilize her for transport? Give me 5 minutes." Sarah checked her chronometer again. 13 minutes until predicted collapse. And they still had to extract Zara K and navigate 500 meters of increasingly unstable tunnel. The mathematics were unforgiving. But Sarah had learned to mistrust mathematics that left no room for human ingenuity. "Rodriguez, alternative routes to the surface. Anything faster than the way we came?" Rodriguez consulted his geological scanner, its display flickering with stress readings that were all in the red zone. "There's an old ventilation shaft about 200 meters from here that connects directly to level 5 of the mining complex. Problem is, it goes straight up for 300 meters, and the access tunnel is showing severe structural damage." "Straight up?" Sarah thought quickly. "Could we use the emergency ascender units?" "Maybe, but Commander, we'd have to reach it first. And the tunnel leading to the shaft is completely blocked by debris from the recent collapses." Another rumble shook the rock around them, stronger than any before. This time, the sound didn't fade away but continued as a low, continuous groan that seemed to come from the planet itself. "That's it," Jenkins said grimly. "The main support structures are failing. We're out of time." Through the gap, Dr. Park was working frantically to stabilize Zara K's leg. The child was conscious, but clearly in pain, her large eyes fixed on the human doctor who was fighting to save her life. "How much longer?" Sarah called out. 2 more minutes. Maybe 3. Sarah looked at her chronometer. 10 minutes to predicted collapse. Even if they extracted Zara K immediately, they would never make it back through the tunnel system in time. The logical choice was clear. Abort the mission and save themselves. It's what the consortium protocols demanded. It's what any rational species would do. But Sarah thought of Maya again. Of the bedtime stories about heroes who found a way when there was no way. Sometimes being human meant refusing to accept that logic was the final answer. "New plan," she announced. "We're not going back the way we came." "Commander?" Rodriguez looked confused. "You said there's a ventilation shaft 200 meters from here. We're going to reach it, but the access tunnel is completely blocked. Then we make our own tunnel." Sarah pulled out the remaining emergency charges. "We have enough explosives left to blast through maybe 50 meters of loose debris. After that, we dig by hand if we have to." Jenkins stared at her. "Commander, you're talking about controlled demolitions in a collapsing cave system. The slightest miscalculation will bury us all." "Then we don't miscalculate." Sarah's voice carried absolute conviction. "Rodriguez, I need precise locations for charge placement. Walsh, maintain communication with the surface and get me everything they know about that ventilation shaft. Jenkins, prep the drilling unit for maximum efficiency." "Commander," Dr. Park called from inside Zara K's prison, "she's as stable as I can make her. But we need to move her now, or not at all." Sarah squeezed through the gap into the small chamber where Zara K waited. The child looked so small and fragile, surrounded by broken stone, but her eyes held the same kind of stubborn courage that Sarah recognized in her own species. "Hello, brave girl," Sarah said in careful Genti. "We're going to get you out of here." Zara K replied in rapid, musical tones. Dr. Park translated. "She says she's not afraid because humans never give up. She wants to know if she'll see the stars again." "Tell her yes," Sarah said, carefully lifting the child despite Dr. Park's splints and bandages. "Tell her she'll see stars and home in her family, because that's what humans do. We bring people home." Extracting Zara K from the gap required painful maneuvering that made the child cry out, despite Dr. Park's pain medications. But finally, she was free, cradled in Sarah's arms as they rejoined the rest of the team. 8 minutes. Rodriguez reported grimly. and the access tunnel to the ventilation shaft is still blocked by approximately 60 meters of debris. Then we better work fast. Sarah handed Zara K to Dr. Park and began examining Rodriguez's geological data. If we place charges here, here, and here, we can blast through the main blockage. After that, it's a straight sprint to the shaft. Commander, Walsh's voice was tight with fear. I'm reading massive seismic activity throughout the complex. The surface reports that sectors 7 through 12 are showing critical structural failure. What about the alien supervisors? They've evacuated all personnel from the lower levels. They think we're already dead. Sarah felt a grim smile cross her face. Then we'll just have to surprise them. The next few minutes became a desperate race against physics and time. Jenkins placed charges with surgical precision, while Rodriguez monitored structural integrity, and Walsh maintained their tenuous communication link with the surface. Dr. Park held Zara K, speaking softly to her in Genti while the child drifted in and out of consciousness from pain and shock. Charges placed, Jenkins announced. But Commander, this is our last set of explosives. If this doesn't work, we're out of options. It'll work, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. Because it has to. The explosion ripped through the blocked tunnel like a sledgehammer through glass. For a terrifying moment, the entire cave system seemed to pause, balanced on the edge of total collapse. Then, slowly, the dust settled to reveal a narrow passage through the debris. It's open, Rodriguez shouted. Narrow, but passable. They moved as a unit, Dr. Park carrying Zara K, while the others cleared smaller obstacles from their path. The ventilation shaft lay ahead, a vertical tunnel that stretched up toward salvation. But as they approached it, another rumble shook the rock around them, this one so powerful that it knocked them all to their knees. Main structural failure has begun, Rodriguez reported, his voice barely audible over the sound of shifting stone. We have maybe 3 minutes before this entire section collapses. The ventilation shaft stretched above them like a chimney, its metal walls scarred by decades of use but still structurally sound. Emergency ascender units could carry them up, but only if they could get everyone attached and activated before the surrounding rock gave way. Everyone clip in, Sarah ordered, handing out the ascender units. Dr. Park, you and Zara K go first. Jenkins and Rodriguez next. Walsh and I will follow. Commander, Dr. Park said, as she attached Zara K to her own unit. If the shaft collapses while we're climbing. It won't, Sarah replied firmly. We didn't come this far to fail now. The ascenders activated with a soft whir, carrying Dr. Park and Zara K up toward the surface. Jenkins and Rodriguez followed moments later, their forms quickly disappearing into the darkness above. Sarah and Walsh were alone at the bottom of the shaft as the sounds of general collapse grew louder around them. After you, Sarah said. But Walsh shook her head. You first, Commander. If anyone doesn't make it out, it shouldn't be the person who made the choice to come down here. Sarah was about to argue when the final rumble began. This wasn't like the others. This was the sound of a mountain giving up, of stone that had stood for millions of years, finally admitting defeat. The tunnel behind them disappeared in a cloud of dust and debris. Together, Sarah said, grabbing Walsh's hand as they activated their ascenders simultaneously. They rose through the shaft as the world collapsed below them. Sarah could hear the metal walls groaning under the pressure of shifting rock. But the shaft held. 50 meters, 100, 200. The circle of light at the top grew larger. And Sarah began to believe they might actually make it. At 250 meters, their ascenders suddenly lurched to a stop. What's wrong? Sarah called out. Debris in the shaft, Walsh replied, examining her unit's display. Something's blocking the top. They hung suspended in the darkness, so close to salvation they could see the lights of the mining station above them, but the final 50 meters might as well have been 50,000 if they couldn't get past whatever was blocking the shaft. Sarah activated her communicator. This is Commander Chen to any station personnel. We're in ventilation shaft 7, 50 meters below surface level. We need immediate assistance. The response came from an unexpected source. Commander Chen, this is Krell 9. We are implementing emergency shaft clearing procedures now. Krell 9? I thought you'd evacuated. The Vorthak do not abandon colleagues, even when those colleagues violate protocol in spectacular fashion. Dr. Park and your other team members have reached the surface safely. The Genti child is being treated in our medical facility. Above them, Sarah could hear machinery working, the sound of emergency equipment clearing debris from the shaft opening. Slowly, grudgingly, the blockage gave way. "Shaft is clear," Krell 9 announced. "Ascend immediately. The structural collapse is spreading." Sarah and Walsh completed their climb in silence, emerging into the bright lights of the mining station's emergency bay. Dr. Park was there, along with Jenkins and Rodriguez, all of them covered in dust and grime but alive. And there, on a medical stretcher surrounded by both human and alien medical personnel, was Zara Kay. The child was conscious, her large eyes bright with relief and gratitude. When she saw Sarah, she spoke rapidly in Genti. Dr. Park translated. She says thank you for keeping your promise. She says she'll tell everyone that humans don't leave people behind. Sarah knelt beside the stretcher, taking one of Zara Kay's small hands in her own. Tell her she was very brave. Tell her that's what humans and Genti have in common. We both know how to be brave when it matters. Dr. Park translated, and Zara Kay's response needed no translation. Her smile was the same language in any species. "Commander Chen." Krell 9's crystalline voice carried a note of something that might have been respect. "You have created a significant diplomatic situation." Sarah stood slowly, suddenly aware that this moment would define not just her career, but humanity's entire relationship with the Galactic Consortium. "I suppose I have. You violated direct orders. You risked the lives of your personnel. You jeopardized critical mining infrastructure. And you completely disregarded established rescue protocols." "Yes, sir. I did all of those things." Krell 9's crystal skin shifted through several color phases. Patterns that Sarah had learned indicated deep thought among the Vorthak. "The Consortium Council will demand explanations. They will question whether humanity is suitable for membership in a civilization that values logic and efficiency above all else." Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Then I guess we'll find out what kind of civilization this really is." But before Krell 9 could respond, Mothen glided into the emergency bay, their tentacles flashing rapid patterns of color. They moved directly to Zara Kay's stretcher, speaking softly in their native language. The child responded with excited chirps, clearly happy to see a familiar face. After a long conversation, Mothen turned to face Sarah and the others. "Zara Kay has told me what happened below," they said, their translation device carrying unusual emotional resonance. "She says that when the rocks fell, she was certain she would die alone in the darkness. But then she remembered stories her parents told her about different species, including the new ones, called humans. She remembered that humans have a saying, 'No one left behind.'" Sarah felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "She believed in us before we'd proven ourselves worthy of belief." "Yes," Mothen agreed, "and that belief was justified. The Genti Council will hear of this rescue. They will hear that when protocol demanded abandonment, humans chose risk instead. They will hear that you valued one child's life above your own safety and career advancement." Krell 9's crystals chimed softly. What Sarah had learned was equivalent to thoughtful humming among the Vorthak. "The mathematics of what you accomplished should have been impossible. 5 humans, using improvised techniques and obsolete equipment, successfully extracted a casualty from conditions that our best computer models declared unsurvivable." "Sometimes," Sarah said quietly, "the most important things can't be calculated." "All there's 4. Perhaps," Krell 9 paused, consulting a device that Sarah hadn't seen before. "I have been in communication with the Consortium Council throughout this incident. They are intrigued by your species' approach to crisis management. Intrigued enough to overlook protocol violations? The Council has decided that humanity's probationary status will continue, but with modified parameters. You will be observed not for compliance with existing protocols, but for your ability to develop new solutions to previously impossible problems." Sarah stared at the Vorthak supervisor. "What does that mean?" "Exactly. It means," Mothen interjected, "that you have given the Consortium something it has not had in 12 millennia. Hope that some problems truly are solvable, even when logic says otherwise. 3 days later, Sarah stood in her office reviewing the final reports from the rescue operation. The mining complex had suffered significant damage, but was being rebuilt with human-designed emergency systems that prioritized rescue access over extraction efficiency. The consortium had approved the modifications unanimously. Zara K was recovering well, her leg healing faster than human doctors had expected thanks to Genti physiology. She had asked to meet with Sarah one more time before her family took her home to their home world. The child arrived with Moth N, walking slowly but steadily on her healing leg. She carried something in her small hands, a crystalline formation that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Through Moth N, she explained that it was a fragment from the cavern where she had been trapped, a piece of the darkness that humans had brought her out of. But now, it was beautiful, catching light instead of hiding from it. She wants you to have it, Moth N translated. She says it will remind you that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the deepest darkness, when someone brave enough reaches down to pull them free. Sarah accepted the gift, feeling its weight and warmth. Tell her I'll treasure it always. And tell her that she taught us something important too. What is that? Sarah looked out her office window at the alien stars that had become home. That being human isn't about following the rules. It's about knowing when to break them. Later that evening, Sarah recorded a message to Earth, to Maya, and to all the families waiting for news from the stars. The consortium wanted to know what kind of species humanity is, she said, holding Zara K's crystal up to catch the light. I think we've given them their answer. We're the species that goes into the dark places when someone needs saving. We're the species that looks at impossible odds and says, watch this. We're the species that believes some things are more important than protocols and procedures and logical calculations. She paused, thinking of a small Genti child singing in the darkness, believing that humans would find a way. We're the species that doesn't leave people behind, and out here among the stars, that's exactly who we need to be. The crystal caught the light of alien suns and threw it back transformed, just as humanity had taken the darkness of the deep tunnels and made it into something bright and beautiful, a reputation for doing the impossible when the impossible was the right thing to do. In the end, that reputation would prove more valuable than all the mining quotas in the galaxy.